just so you're aware, you are now being recorded. And yeah, thanks everybody for the volunteers who wanted to speak tonight. And yeah, I'm gonna pull up my talk here, and I will get us going with some challenging recipes and subtitled "Cooking with Fire." Feel free to take some notes in the Google document there as I go through. And can someone give me a thumbs up that you can see my title slide? Okay, can you get down? Thank you. Can you get down, please? I'm going to talk. All right, so challenging recipes. You might be interested to know, what do I mean by that? So this is my definition, and so is this. What I intended to show tonight, you were all curious people, interested in things, so I wanted to share with you some recipes that I really find have just enough of a challenge that are still really enjoyable to make. Most of them come from some culture that is not my own, and yet these recipes are not so difficult that it took years to master. And so I'm gonna show you some really interesting recipes. Hopefully it's something in here that you may not have come across before, and maybe something you want to try. And I'm gonna give links throughout to give you some resources if it is something you want to give it a go on. So here are the recipes I'm going to talk about. There is a Persian recipe called kebab kubade. I'm going to talk about paella, adventures in cooking gumbo, and a Japanese dish called okonomiyaki, with an honorable mention to a Greek-style cheese on fire called saganaki, which is fun. You should set cheese on fire, but that one it didn't really quite meet the bar of having a degree of difficulty where I felt it fit my definition. All right, so first I'm going to mention kebab kubade. If you're not from Nashville, or you're not aware of some of the demographics that are around in the city, there are actually a lot of Kurdish refugees. Some of them live in restaurants, and this is a very common Kurdish or Persian dish, and it is ground meat on a long kebab, and it is cooked over an open flame. And so the achievement is, and it is anybody's guess, anytime you cook this dish, if those ground meat, right, will actually hold on to this skewer, and as you know, the fat is rendering, as things are getting a little bit moist there, that it doesn't just go and fall right into the fire. So I think I got a chime here that someone's waiting to come in. So let me bring them in real quick. Yep, there we go. And we're back. So there is an absolutely excellent YouTube series on cooking all kinds of Persian dishes, including another really challenging rice dish. It's Keshar's Kitchen, and he's got a website and all kinds of good resources out there for you. That one's fun. Another one cooked over an open flame, so here's a bit of a theme going on, is paella. This one is a lot of fun. Again, the flame adds a degree of challenge to actually cooking this right. Getting it crunchy on the bottom layer of this rice is one of the things where cooking it over an open fire helps, because it actually does get hot enough. You can get a nice refrito, or fried layer on the bottom of this rice. And yeah, there's lots of opinions on what should go into a paella. Lots of people have very high and mighty feelings about what is right and wrong for what should go in this rice, and I'm not going to get into it. I'm just going to skip right over that and move on. But you do have to have a degree of control over how high this pan is away from the fire, or how high the flames get, because there's definitely some things that could go wrong with this. So this was one example I caught on my security camera of me, and I just caught the whole pan on fire. You're cooking some vegetables in a decent layer of oil to get this thing going, and it just in this particular setup, I didn't have good control of the height of my pan over the open flame. And that flame you see there is probably 10 feet tall-ish. But a wonderful adventure nonetheless. Cook this one outside. There you go. So this is a picture of me and my wife here from a number of years ago, making gumbo. And this one is a challenge not to burn yourself. Certainly, the first step of making gumbo, which is this Louisiana recipe of a kind of stew that has, again, some debate about what all goes into gumbo. I'm going to gloss over that a little bit. You can find your favorite Louisiana chef. Either I have a link here to Emeril Lagasse, or maybe you like Paul Prudhomme or somebody else. But as you cook down this gravy, it starts to bubble and spit. And if you do not keep stirring it for like a half an hour, it'll get you. It will get you real good. I give some links here too. A place online where you can order some of the harder to find ingredients like filet powder, as well as one of my all-time favorite places. It just so happens that it's in Atlanta, but I have in the past been able to find absolutely everything at that place. A little bit of a drive from Nashville for me, but every once in a while it has been worth it. So again, a few resources there for everybody else. So this is not a picture of my cooking, but this is another just really fun and kind of a sloppy recipe for something that is sometimes referred to as Japanese pizza. I don't particularly care for that name. I don't think it does it justice. It's kind of something like a stuffed pancake or a crepe. It is a very heavy dish. And one of the fun ingredients to work with is this so-called mountain potato called a yama imo or a naga imo, and it is the starchiest vegetable that I have ever touched. If some of you from the south of the United States are familiar what happens to okra if you boil it, it makes long, starchy, mucosal things, and it's intense, but it works in this dish like egg whites, is what I came to figure out. But it is very sticky when you grate this particular tuber. And one of the funnest things about okonomiyaki is that word translates to have it your way. And so you can just pick out basically whatever ingredients you want. I highly recommend some thick slices of pork belly as something very traditional to go with this one. And you can't really go wrong when you're just eating a pancake on top of a bunch of thick bacon. So, sometimes you're in a particular kind of store, and it is really hard to perhaps read some of the ingredients. But this was one of the things that I learned sort of traveling internationally, is that you can get really far if you just learn the letters in a foreign country. So I took like 2 months. I learned some of the Japanese characters, not the more complicated ones, but the ones that are for syllabic spelling in Japanese. And I took 2 months, and actually with that, you can pretty much get by with being able to read off some ingredients in a grocery store. If all else fails, Google Translate. So that is my talk. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you, Nick. How'd I do on time?
Congratulations.
Well, I wasn't really
couldn't
paying
see
attention.
my clock as I
Wasn't either.
in presentation mode, so I hope I did okay. Good.
Where's the Saganaki? I thought there's I don't know. I was looking at college notes. There's like a grilled cheese on fire.
That was his runner-up.
So, funny enough, we actually made Saganaki tonight for dinner, but it was kind of an honorable mention because the flambe is really easy. You actually just take some hard Greek cheese, you coat it in flour, you fry that. So already you're off to a good start. You pour alcohol on it in the form of ouzo, so 1-up again, and then you set that on fire, and then you put out that fire with lemon juice. And it's a pretty straightforward recipe, as far as I'm concerned. So it didn't quite meet the level of a challenge, but it is a lot of fun, so it got the honorable mention in the talk.
What's the next challenging dish on your list that you're going to try?
That is a very good question. And honestly, that was the secondary reason I wanted to present this, because I'm open to suggestions.
Dude, if you could do a whole lightning talk on how to properly make a beef stir fry, I would be so into that, because I have just failed for the upteenth time to make a beef stir fry. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Like, I'm trying to like slice them really thin, but then they're like go against the grain. I'm like, what is the grain of a meat? I feel like it's like the grain is like this. It's like this. There's no grain here. It's on a piece of wood. And then I tried to velvet it, and that just became a gooey mess.
I'm not familiar with that term, so that's interesting. Thank you for that.
Apparently Chinese restaurants, like, they have a whole thing where they put like corn cornstarch. Cornstarch, and then
okay, sure. For like the beef and broccoli, yeah. Sure.
But the key is to not let it sit in that. Like, you have to put it in cornstarch and then immediately throw it into the hot pan. That's how you do it.
No, they said, like, don't worry about it. Just, like, let it sit there while you, like, prepare all your other crap. And so I did.
So that is also something where a lot of my experience has been with a lot of these dishes. You know, I showed where I actually was fortunate enough to go to Japan first. And then once I had an idea of how it was supposed to go, then I could try to make it myself. That was the same with some of the Persian restaurants here in Nashville, where I could go and I could taste it the proper way first, and then get after it myself. But sometimes you just need to make friends with somebody who really knows. That is not one that's really in my repertoire. But
you just have to come over. That's all I can say. I can slice
we need some live demos
anyway, and can you show
in Penny
how the grain is?
Oh my god, you need to show me this magic. Yeah, like especially when quarantine's over, I'm like, I will show up day one at your house and be like, how do you slice this beef? What am I doing wrong? But yeah, but if you want something challenging, I suggest that.
I think my
Um,
wife made that once, and I think it turned out okay. But yeah, it wasn't really. That's not very common for us. But
that's
cool.
fair. Or maybe it's not
I'm
that
glad we
hard.
made a connection between you and Bina. Excellent, excellent. All right, Chang, are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready. Let me share my screen. Okay, let's see. Wow, I haven't done this in a while. Wait, where's the share button? Share, share screen. Here we go. Host disable participant screen sharing.
You have to go to, there's a security button at the bottom that'll allow you to turn on.
And try again. There you are.
Can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Remove the thing, full screen, start presenting. All right, so since the pandemic hits, I was like, okay, I don't know what to do at home. So I've been doing individual stock investment for a long time. But I never really got the hang of it. And I basically did some really horrible decisions since COVID hit. So I learned a few things, and I basically, my goal is to hit 20% year over year return. And I think I've learned something. So I'll just show you a few things. 20%, my goal for this goal of 20% yearly return is based on I think if you look at S&P 500, it's about 10% per year. So I want to double that with individual stock investment, which will, for a 30-year period of time, if you look at compounding, will reduce you will get the same investment in 15 years. So it will save me 15 years. So that was my goal. So all right, I'll just show you what I did. This is just this year. And I think only in the last 3 months, I've learned more than I learned in the last, I would say 7 or 8 years. So I'll just say what I did. So this is my investment this year or yearly cumulative return versus the S&P 500. The first stage is what I call speculating on hot stocks. You have Tesla, you have Microsoft, and then you have a bunch of tech stock like Twilio. I think I bought Square and a bunch of other stuff. And okay, it did really well. And then February hits. Once COVID hits, I was like, okay, the portfolio just dropped like everybody else's. And once it hits the very bottom, at that time, at the very bottom, that right there, I remember I was in a onsen resort in Taiwan. I was taking a trip in Taiwan. I was woke up at 3 a.m. Look at my phone, and I realized, wow, U.S. market has crashed to the very bottom. So what I do, I panic sell everything. And after I panic sell, I went into another stage of speculation where I think, oh, okay, I guess it will keep falling, so I just hoard cash. That's why you see 0% change in the portfolio. I didn't do anything. I pull everything. So I have cash in the portfolio. And then once I realized, okay, it's bouncing back, let me try to make some more speculations. And now I'm speculating which stock will benefit from all the stimulus and all the weird stuff the government had put in. So I bought a lot of CCO and COH. Those are cruise stocks. You have AAL, which is American Airlines. You have M, which is Macy's, AMC, which is the theater, MGM, the Las Vegas casinos. It's all sorts of weird stuff that basically at the end of June, I lost 20. I was down 20%. And if you look at S&P 500, at that point of time, if I invested in index fund, I will only be down maybe 5 or maybe 2 to 3% instead of down 20%. So at that point, I told myself, okay, this year is a wash, because I had a realization, I don't know what I'm doing. So let me see if I can come up with a better strategy. Let me learn what people are doing out there, who are beating the stock market, or beating the market constantly. So finally, I moved into a new portfolio with high growth stocks. And so far, I'm hitting about 35% annual return as of today, I believe. So but this is not about picking individual what stock to pick, because I think they're kind of useless and the criteria will change over time. But I think I've learned a few principles. I will show you what the references are and why did I make those decisions, those horrible decisions. So the first, I only have two principles. The first principle is what I call you should pick a company, not pick the stock. And the idea is that Benjamin Grant, who wrote The Intelligent Investor, he said in the short run, the market is a voting machine, but in the long run, it's a weighing machine. What it means is that in the short run, the market is driven by emotions and all the basically human psychology to it. So all the volatility associated with it is because people are just like speculating. But in the long run, it comes down to the fundamentals of a company. So a company that grows fast, let's say this company grows 50% year over year, on average, this company's stock price will go up also 50% year over year. So it comes down to, can I pick the great company whose company fundamentals are increasing at a rate that's beating the market average? And so this is my current picking criteria. It's like, hey, you need to have a high year over year revenue growth, you have high cash, no debt, whatever. But don't believe what I said, because this will evolve over time. And I won't tell you, like, I will tell you where I get this, but it's not as important as in like having understanding that you're not speculating stock. I'm not trying to like time the market at the right place, but I'm trusting a company and trusting this company will make money over time and the stock price will catch up, or eventually go to a place where it's like kind of like match the company's value. So and as a corollary, oh my God, I forgot that term, like corollary to this is like I learned to avoid price anchoring. What I found, what the most difficult thing in the individual stock investment is that how do you invest more when people think a stock is already expensive? A prime example for this would be Amazon. So if you look at between 2016 and 2019, every day you will think Amazon is expensive, but not in 2020. You found that like literally every single day you buy Amazon, you will make multiples times of return between 2016 and 2019. And every day, everybody will tell you between 2016 and 2019 that Amazon is too expensive. So that's the difficult part, is how do you, why is that, what's wrong? Why like, are we in a bubble? Is this a bubble? No, it's not a bubble. It's because a great company stock is always expensive. If you realize that this is like, I kind of have a paradigm shift. I'll show you where I get this later. It's from a discussion board. But once I realized this, I realized, hey, I really don't want to look at a company's stock price anymore. I just need to learn how to pick the great company. And this is what I didn't learn like in the last 7 years, and I learned in 3. This is like, just, I don't know, this is like a paradigm shift to me. It's like, you really, once you realize that price is not important, you can start really become an investor. And finally, you want to concentrate with your portfolio so you can avoid the law of large numbers. If there are like 20, 50 stocks in your portfolio, you basically cannot beat the market, because you will get regression to the mean, and your performance will be very close to a mutual fund. So I tried, like, right now I only have 5 stocks in my portfolio. So you can say each stock takes up about 10 to 20% of my personal net worth, net worth, yeah, because I don't have real estate. All my money is in stock market. So I have 15% on each stock about, and then some cash positions for my emergency fund. The second principle is what I call, you have to pay the price of volatility. What I have found is over the last 3 months, even when my portfolio was increasing, half of the trading days, it went up or down by more than 3%. And this is a crazy number to me, because I was not used to this. Because if it's Dow Jones index, that means you're experiencing 800 points of change almost like every other day. It's like, imagine like you look at stock news today where Donnie tweeted and it's like dropped like 300 points. that my portfolio will be up or down 800 points every day. But I learned that in a company, which is like, for example, Amazon, Monster Energy, whatever, like if you look in the past, 98% of the time they're trading less than their all-time high. So of a year had 360 days, only 6 days they're spending making all-time highs. So it's okay that my stock is not going up. I'm below the all-time. I'm buying near the top, whatever, however you say it. It's okay because 98% of the time it's not trying to break the all-time high. Once I realized this, I can be better to deal with the volatility of an individual stock portfolio. And also on the flip side, it also tells me not to use any margin. Margin means you borrow money from your brokerage to trade or to invest. And why do I not want to borrow money? Is because if I borrow money and you go below this thing that your portfolio drop below a certain value, what they call the margin maintenance, then you will initiate a margin call, and your brokerage will force you to sell the stock, and that basically makes you sell at the lowest point, which is the mistake I made during the bottom of COVID. So if you don't use margin, you will never have a program that forces you to sell your stock at the worst time. This is also why mutual funds can never outperform market average, because most investors tend to pull out their money out of mutual funds when the stock market is tanking. So the portfolio manager has to sell their stock. So that's why they have no way to beat the markets, not because they are not smart enough, but it's because their portfolio is driven by the individual investors that put money in their mutual funds. So there's only two things. One, you pick the great company and you concentrate. And then you understand that the price you're paying to maintain this type of portfolio is volatility. So okay, you will see very, very wide swings and you don't want to use margin. The references, the biggest thing I learned was this thing, kind of like an interesting discussion board called Sauce Investing Discussions. This is probably the most knowledgeable thing I've ever found. Like, this is like incredible. These people, like this guy Saul Rosenthal, he posts his stock portfolio for almost over 12 years, I think, like before the 2009 crisis. He has over 36% year-over-year return, starting from 1985. And in the last 4 years, he's just like, it's like pretty incredible. Like, this is a lot of things I learned, but they're kind of like, I don't know, just very incredible. There are 3 books that I highly recommend it if you want to read more about how to think about investment, not just like trading as in like do day trading or trade every month or something like that. But that's where I learned all this stuff from. And again, I don't trust everything I said, because maybe 1 year later it will crush like 50% down or whatever. But we'll come back, and it's better to make a prediction and come back to see if it's true than not to make a prediction at all. So that's all.
Cool.
Thanks, Chang. Let's maybe get like one question or comment.
I wanted to ask Chang, it's sort of 2 questions, but when you are thinking about what do you call like a good company to invest in, what exactly is the first thing that you go to? Do you look at like the companies who create products that you use on a daily basis? And then on top of that, do you also look at I think the terminology they use is like the movers and shakers, like the stocks that shoot up like 300% in a day?
So I did invest in penny stocks at one point. That's where I lose tons of money. Don't do penny stocks. The first thing I look into is the website. Each company has this thing called investor relations.
Mm-hmm.
This is where you can find their revenue and financial statements. So that's where I get all my data. First, I will go there and get the data, and then as of now, I'm kind of like following what the people's idea about getting penny university stocks. But yeah, I'm trying. But that's where I go to, and also I try to look for leader in the field. So right now, it doesn't have to be certain kind of company, but I'm trying to get a company that has recurring revenue, dominates the market, and a large total addressable market. So like it could be any field. Honestly, like back in the day, Amazon was that. Like right now, like there's like this company in, I think Edward would know, but it's called Meli, Mercado Libre in Latin America, which is basically like Amazon in South America, which is like basically dominating the South American market. Things
Yeah.
like
Very, very important here.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mercado Libre.
yeah, Mercado Libre. And there are companies
Yeah.
like that. You can just go into their investor relation. They will show you their guidance. You will see that they're doing 60%.
I think it's from Argentina, but it has a strong presence in Brazil. It's like eBay, Brazilian eBay.
But overall, I think like you don't have to throw all your net worth in there. Just put in a little bit, and then you will kind of like. I feel like it's kind of like picking your fantasy sports team. You invest just like $100, and now you started to like read a little more about it, and you will feel like, okay, do I feel good about this company or not? Because I think as a long-term investor, the most important thing is, do you have enough faith in this company to be able to hold through the downturns, to hold through the volatility turns?
Okay, thanks.
Good. Thanks, y'all. Thanks, Chang. Let's move on to Nick, who is going to give us a crash course in FIRE.
Yeah, it's funny. This is actually a kind of a good follow-up to, or I guess it pairs well with Chang's topic. So here we go. You guys see my screen? Cool. All right, so this is the FIRE crash course. I'm actually gonna set up my stopwatch just so I don't go too long. All right, so what does FIRE mean? It stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. The two basic ideas being financial independence means that you have saved enough money to not have to work in order to live. People have some, it's a pretty personal thing, so everyone's gonna have slightly different definitions, but that's a pretty solid one just to get started. And then retiring early is retiring before the kind of accepted age of retirement, which in the US might be around 65 years old. So the followers of the FIRE movement basically are trying to save and invest as much money as quickly as possible and retire by 50, 40, and sometimes even like 30 years old if they have gotten lucky enough or have been disciplined enough. So you're shooting for a magic number here, and the rule of thumb is kind of 25 times your annual living expenses. So as an example, if you're spending, if you have $50,000 a year in expenses, you would want to have $1.25 million in investments or in savings in order to be able to say you're financially independent. And this comes from the 4% rule of thumb. So there's a study called the Trinity study that determined if you withdraw 4% of your portfolio every year, you have a 95% chance of not running out of money after 30 years. So if we go back to our example, 4% of 1.25 million is $50,000. So you could withdraw that amount and then adjust it for inflation for 30 years and have a really great chance of not running out of money. So there are some issues with this if you actually do want to retire really early, say at like 40 and you're planning to live to 80 or 90 years old. So when you if you want to come up with really your specific financial independence number, you have to play with the numbers a little bit more. And usually what people end up coming up with is maybe something closer to 3.5% for something that could last you 50 years. And there's this cool calculator that you can use to see how your savings might against various market scenarios that have happened over the past 100 years or something like that. So we can put our numbers in here. This was our 1.25 million. I think I put that in right. And spending 50,000 a year. And I must have not done that right. What did I? Oh, I did 12 million. Whoops. Let's take a zero off. And we can see here that in this scenario, after 30 years, there actually were some scenarios in which we ran out of money. So maybe we want to save a little bit more, and instead we're going to save 1.5 because and see if we can last 40 years. And in this case, we're actually able to make it to 40 years with only one scenario really getting to really hitting zero there. And then in other scenarios, we've actually made 20 million by the time that we die, I guess. So coming back over here, there's a few strategies that people use in order to get to these numbers. Because at first it seems like, okay, that's a huge number that I have to get to, $1.25 million. But it comes down to a few simple strategies. So the main thing is you want to grow your gap. So you're going to try to increase your income and also decrease your expenses. And I'm going to go over to another calculator here. This shows kind of how you could try to increase your savings rate in order to retire earlier. So in this example, we have a 20% savings rate. Just put in 70,000 a year, you're saving 14,000. And if that's the case, we're assuming a 7% rate of return, which is about the S&P 500 counting inflation. And that would allow you to retire in 30 years. But as you increase this number, we're going to be able to see that those years go down. So if you can save 30% of your income, you might be able to retire in 24 years. And if you can save 50%, you might be able to retire in 15 years. So the people who are following the FIRE movement are really trying to reduce their expenses, increase their income, and get over that 50% savings rate in order to be able to retire as soon as possible. We'll go back again. One of the other tenets that most people follow is to invest in low-cost index funds, which is contrary to what Chang's style of investing is. But the basic idea is that the S&P 500 has returns 10% or 7% with inflation, and you're pretty much guaranteed to get that return. So if you just invest all your money in there, you can be pretty sure that you're going to get that return without having to do any work, and you're going to be well diversified. And there's other low-cost funds that you could invest in as well. You might also want to multiply your income streams, so adding real estate or trying to have a side hustle, and then also using tax advantage accounts like contributing to your 401k or a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. And then I had a quote here actually from Morgan Housel, who Chang also mentioned, which is if you want to grow your wealth and retire early, you just have to live below your means and be patient. And so I have a couple book suggestions here. I really love Your Money or Your Life, and also The Boglehead's Guide to Investing, and some other podcasts are Afford Anything and Choose FI. So that's my talk. Sorry, it was like a whirlwind.
That's how this is supposed to go. Very nice.
Lightning.
Yeah. You just strike a little bit, and then we continue to follow up on the finance channel if we're interested in all this, right? So.
Yeah, perfect.
There you go. Any quick questions for Nick?
Yeah, I don't know. You might have mentioned it in your talk, and I just missed it. But so, what are you kind of aiming for? Like, for like how long until you think you will retire using this plan yourself?
So I don't really care about the early retirement part of it because and this is what a lot of people say too. I didn't really mention this is a lot of people, financial independence gives you the freedom to work on what you want or do what you want. So maybe you get to that point and you actually do retire and you volunteer your time. Or maybe you just transition to working fewer hours and traveling more, spending time building your own business. So I don't really have like a timeline. For me, it's more, I want to save as much money as quickly as possible to have as much freedom as possible. So I personally aim like, this changes, I guess, as your income changes, but I aim for like a 40% savings rate. And then it gives me a nice balance of, not being too crazy stingy, but also making sure that I provide myself with a lot of freedom and flexibility in the future, which is important to me.
Good. All right, Colin, you're on deck.
Okay.
Using Firebase as a backend.
Okay. Can y'all give me a thumbs up when you can see my screen? Okay. So I hope I won't run over time. We'll see. I'm gonna watch my time. So something I've learned is that when you're a lifelong learner, a lot of people tend to have a lot of interesting ideas and there's a lot of tech-minded people in PennyU. So I thought this would be a good chat. For those of you that aren't familiar, an MVP, minimum viable product. It's when you're trying to get like a piece of software or just any kind of product out into the world, but you got to just demo it. You got to get the lowest of the low criteria to get your product out there. And so I think that it's important to know all of the technologies that are possible for using software like this. So I'm going to be covering Firebase for this talk. And so what are my credentials, I guess, to talk about this? I've started a Discord bot using Firebase as a backend to store various bits and pieces of data for each server. I started working on a demo project that's going to be a social networking platform. And then for my work, we started out with Firebase before moving to our own managed system with MongoDB, just to get a demo up to show investors. And so the first thing that I love about Firebase is how easy it is to get started. I mean, you can just click 2 buttons, add project, type in a name, hit continue, and then you're done and it creates your project. It's incredibly easy to just get started and start throwing data into there. And then now the question is, well, what can Firebase exactly do for your product? Why is it useful? Well, first off, it has a ton of different abilities that most apps are going to have, such as authentication here. You can quickly throw in about maybe 8 lines of code, a full authentication system using a ton of different methods: email, password, text, Google, OAuth, GitHub, Apple, a bunch of other stuff. It comes preloaded with templates and stuff for authentication too. Then you've got Cloud Firestore, which is a NoSQL database. So if you were going to use a platform like MongoDB, this is a great replacement, and you can manually insert data from a nice looking UI here if you're not really a tech person. And it's just very clean, very simple, very quick to get started with. You've got a real-time database for storing things like chat messages or various other bits and pieces of information that you want your users to receive in real time. You can store images, and you can also host a website or an app on this platform. And this presentation is actually hosted on Firebase. And then the last thing is it comes equipped with very simple analytics. I couldn't get this set up yet, but it'll hook into Google Analytics, and just like a website, you'll be able to see like where users are going, what the flow they're taking is, where they're leaving your app, and stuff like that. And yeah, that's about it. So I always say, if you're gonna build an MVP, do it the simplest way. Go with pre-built systems, use Firebase, and just get your product off the ground and your idea off the ground immediately. And you can find at the link here, this is the whole presentation. There you go.
that was a lightning talk.
Hmm.
Well done.
I got it done in about 3.5 minutes.
I think so. Yeah.
I have an
Cool.
immediate question. I've heard exactly what you said. Like people say when you start building a backend, don't like MVP, just don't use a backend, just use Firebase. Does that like, if I, based on what I see, like does that mean it will give me a full REST API? I just need like to dump a, I don't know, a little bit of data and then it will just host everything for me?
Yeah, for most languages, they actually have like built-in packages. So like if you're building an app in React Native, for example, which is what I have the most experience with, you can just quickly do an npm install, throw it into your app, and then just do like firebase.authentication, add a user, right? It's that simple. And I do believe they have some REST API endpoints if you want to connect to those without using their packages and stuff. But yeah, it's super easy to get started. I would just, my only recommendation is that as soon as you move away from MVP, switch over, do a managed server.
I don't really have much experience with Firebase, but there's this article that I'm sharing in the chat that is a really funny example of when Firebase can go wrong. That is just
I did see this. I did see this article, yes.
A good thing to know. It's like, oh wait, why should you only use this for your MVP? It's easy to get out of hand. There's managed services that make it very easy to get out of hand. So it's
Yeah,
just a funny story.
Yeah, I'll tell an interesting story about this. When we started building our MVP for Camelot, we thought, oh, we're just going to show this off to investors. We're going to do our fundraising, and then we're going to move away from this. Then it turned out to be a much longer process, and then before we know it, we hadn't gotten fundraising yet, and we're already at the user testing stage. So we're just like fiddling around. Our devs are working, and then I get a text, and it says, "Hey, our users are locked out of the app." Because Firebase's free plan only goes so far, and apparently as soon as you hit their quotas, they will turn off everything. So I had to scramble to within 5 minutes get set up on their paid plan. And now we're finally moving over to our own system, which is very good.
All right. Thank you, Colin. And now for our last lightning talk to Bina talking about Quetzal.
So let's see how I can. Okay, I'm just gonna do a full on and then hopefully that works. I have a few things going on, so everybody can see my screen. Since I saw the wide range of topics, I was like, I'm gonna go for my favorite bird. So, and it's actually Quetzal, legend, currency, national treasure. What is it? So yeah, it is a bird. And it actually appears not only in Guatemala, but all along Central America. And there are different subspecies of Quetzal. Today I'm mainly focusing on the repleniscent Quetzal, which is the most famous Quetzal variant since it has these large brilliant tail feathers. And you will see that in the next following slides as well. Now, Quetzal is an incredible bird, and in Guatemala, it's more than a bird. It's a symbol for freedom, it's their local currency, and it's also featured on their flag. And, come on. Yeah, there we go. And so Quetzal is a gorgeous, tiny bird actually in bright teal. What you see on the image on the very left is a male Quetzal during breeding season, which is between February and about end of June, beginning of July. And it has this bright red front and then those amazing 2 tail feathers. In the central image, you actually see a male one right next to a female one. Also interesting about those tail feathers is they only developed them at the age of about 3 years. And this species of bird is amazing in a lot of things. One aspect is, for example, the guys are building the nests, and then the ladies come by, inspect, and decide with which gentleman they're gonna keep living. And there is a lot of legends that go with that bird. And so in Mesoamerica, Quetzal is featured in a lot of the languages and means different things, mostly sacred, precious, or erected. And on the left, you actually have a picture of Quetzalcoatl. It was a very important mythological bird in the Aztec, but also the Maya culture. And there is a particular Mayan legend, which is the fight between the Mayan hero Tecún Umán and the Spanish conquistador Pedro de Alvarado, and where Tecún Umán gets wounded by Pedro de Alvarado, and the bird dips its feathers in its blood, and that's why the chest of the replenissant Quetzal is red. And there is a second legend also where it's said that before the Spanish invaders came, that the Quetzal had the most amazing song, and there was just nothing like it, but they were so saddened by the Spanish and the consequences that the Spanish invasion had, that they lost their voice. And it is the ultimate symbol for freedom, since until the 1990s, it was impossible to keep Quetzal in captivity. They would just commit suicide. And here in the US, you can actually see Quetzal at the Dallas World Aquarium, which is only one of 2 places that I'm even aware of that are able to keep the species and breed the species. And they have a breeding program with the second place that's actually able to keep them in Costa Rica. And they had their first hatchlings only in 2003, the first time in Costa Rica, and I think 2013 in the Dallas World Aquarium. And so it's pretty amazing. There's only a lot of there's also a lot of controversy about that bird or its importance, and one of the controversies is Montezuma's headdress. It's actually an amazing piece of cultural art, and funnily enough, it was acquired in about the 16th century by an Austrian how do you call this, ruler. He was not a ruler, he is an archduke, Ferdinand II, a Habsburg, and he got it. And since then it was for a long time in his part of Austria, but it's moved in the beginning of the 19th century, around 1930, to Vienna, to the Museum of Ethnology. And it's this amazing headdress, like you can see those long feathers and you get a feel for the dimension, like the small center, that's actually where a head is supposed to go. And Austria and Mexico have been fighting about who this headdress really belongs to. for years and years, and it's still an ongoing discussion since Mexico wants it back. Yeah, and that was my talk about my favorite bird. And next time I'm going to be talking about the 47 Ronin. And I know there's a couple of very Japan affine nerds around Penny University that's gonna enjoy that. And because with that legend, there is also a very interesting twist. Thank you.
Very nice.
Awesome.
Very nice, Mina. Thank you. And already planning for next time. Excellent. Any questions for Mina?
I have a comment. I like really feel like akin to that female bird, because I feel like I did that a lot, like in college in my early 20s. Like I'd show up at a guy's apartment and be like, no, no, this isn't gonna work. Thank you for your time.
I have to admit, in that regard, I was even worse. Some guys just opened their mouth and I was like, nope, bye. Yep.
What
Sorry, can I cover
what
up a real
first?
quick?
Oh no, my bad. I was just wondering, like, what got you interested in the bird? Like, what drew you towards that bird?
Actually, I'm originally from Austria, from Vienna. We have tons of museums with quite extensive artwork, because the Habsburg were huge art collectors and such, and also huge in collecting species from other countries and so on. So our Natural History Museum in Vienna has an extensive collection of all sorts of animals. And one of my favorite things there is actually a stuffed quetzal. I always admired the ratio of tail feather to bird, because the bird is literally just a couple of inches high, but the feathers are longer than a foot, like you saw in that huge headdress. Like, it's just amazing.
Awesome.
All right. Anything else? All right.